I've got a letter from a recovering porn addict who's doing really well in his own journey, but he's begun to see the same changes in his young nephew that he saw in himself when he was starting to get hooked on porn. What can he do about it? Anon writes, "Hey Noah, I was at my sister's house the other day, and I noticed my nephew is low energy, lethargic, procrastinating on homework, etc. He's previously been a really bright and lively kid, and I would chalk it up to puberty if I hadn't seen the same things in myself when I was his age after finding porn. I'm not 100% sure, of course, but it's a definite possibility, especially after my sister told me he's regularly staying up in his room with his electronics till early hours of the morning and sleeps through the day a lot, and is starting to have trouble in school with keeping up with his homework. All things I remember doing. Either way, I want to have at least the discussion with her, just so she's aware if she's not already. Maybe show her some blockers and talk about what porn did in my life, while still respecting her parenting style. I wish that somebody had talked to me about it and nipped it in the bud." Before I flushed away so many years and almost landed at a dead end. I really don't want to see that happen to my nephew. Anyway, any tips or pointers for approaching the conversation would be helpful. I rewatched Gary Wilson's TED Talk presentation again, and it struck me as kind of outdated. Are there any newer resources you could recommend watching together with her? Thanks. I'm really glad that you recognize those signs. And like you said, you don't know for sure that the nephew is watching porn when he's in his room all night. Maybe he's playing video games, or maybe he's studying archaeology and he's really into archaeology and obsessed with it to the exclusion of taking care of himself or his other schoolwork. Who knows? But the likelihood that it is porn is definitely not something that you can just dismiss. Most people encounter pornography before they're 18 years old. Now that we have the internet and the unlimited access to novel, infinite adult content that the internet provides. And a lot of people who do get exposed to porn, especially boys, end up seeking it out again and again. And some of them get hooked on it and develop the problems that you and I have faced. So I'm glad that you recognize this and that you have the personal experience and knowledge to be able to talk to him about this, because even if he hasn't encountered porn yet, he probably will before he's really prepared for it, unless you help him become prepared, unless you share your story with him, your experience with him, and all the knowledge that you've gained along that path. It's not an advantage that you or I had when we were growing up and first exposed to porn, because the internet was new and people weren't aware of the dangers of unlimited access to pornographic material from a young age. And most people still aren't aware of those dangers, but you and I are. And I believe that we have the responsibility to spread that information and help others protect themselves and protect their loved ones, protect their children. So I'm glad that you reached out to me with this. I think it's a very important question and something that a lot of us need to be considering, whether we're parents or we just have young children, people who are growing up in the era of the internet in our lives as nephews, nieces, friends, sons and daughters. So I do recommend that you talk to your sister first. I don't think you should go past her and cut straight to talking with your nephew about this without first having a conversation with her. And it doesn't sound like you've talked to her before about your personal experience with porn use and your journey of porn addiction recovery and how much that's affected your life, though I'm sure that she has seen the changes in you over the last year. And by the way, this person, this Anon who has written to me in this letter, is a client of mine, and he is in the group that I run, the Rebooter Support and Discussion Group, that you can find out more about in my Linktree list of links in the description of this video. So the first thing I recommend you do is to ask your sister if there's a time when she can talk with you about something that is serious. And it's something that you want to open up to her about. It's something that might take some time and some attention. You don't just want to spring it on her when she's got a bunch of errands to do or a bunch of things that she has to split her attention between. You want to give her the opportunity to prepare herself, like, oh, okay, like he wants to have a serious conversation. I'm going to set aside the time and the focus to give it that focus it deserves. It's important when you do have that conversation to share the overarching important facts, but not necessarily all the details. You don't have to get super personal. You don't have to share things that you're like details that you are embarrassed by or that you don't think are actually going to be productive for the conversation. But you can speak in more generalities and you can say, these are things that men and young boys and women and young girls too today are experiencing. And I myself know that this is true because I went through many of these things. You can share that when you were her son's age, your nephew's age, you first encountered porn on the internet and what sort of effect that had on you, how it started to take away your energy and your time and your attention from other parts of your life, how it became something that escalated your sexual preferences and made it very difficult or impossible to connect romantically or sexually with real partners when you were older and wanting that and wanting to date, and how it diverted your energy away from growing yourself into the adult you wanted to be and kept it in that loop of seeking pleasure and stimulation with internet porn instead, and all the changes, the positive changes and growth you've seen in the last year since you've been able to stop using porn. So, a few of the facts that I think will be important to share is first, something like many men and boys, I started looking at porn quite young, very common now that the internet is so widely available. I was X age when I first encountered it, and I used it regularly in my life. And then at some point, I realized that what I thought was harmless entertainment, something that everyone did, that it was normal and healthy, was actually having a lot of negative effects on my life, both my ability to connect romantically, but also my ability to just be satisfied in my own life and to progress and grow in the ways that I wanted to. And whatever other symptoms brought you to this journey of wanting to quit porn and live porn free. I decided not to watch it anymore. But despite my best efforts, I kept going back to it for some reason, no matter how much I regretted it afterward or how much I steeled myself to make a different decision next time. I continued to make that choice, go back and use it again. And after doing some learning and talking with others who had experienced this as well, I realized that it was a lot like some people's relationship to cigarettes or alcohol or gambling, where even after they've recognized it's something they no longer want in their lives and they've committed to either reducing that use or stopping it altogether, that they find they no longer have the self-control necessary to keep that promise to themselves. And it has become compulsive, or another word that people use to describe it, addictive, an addiction. And using the addiction language is optional. The A word comes with a lot of baggage. Different people have different ideas of what addiction means. It is a word that I use, and I go by the American Society of Addiction Medicine's definition, which you can look up or even share with her if you like. But it's not necessary to use the addiction language if you think it will just muddy the waters of the conversation. And lastly, I got help and support, and I'm doing a lot better now. I've experienced XYZ benefits, and I'm excited about life. So that Gary Wilson TED Talk that you mentioned, The Great Porn Experiment, still available on YouTube and still a great video, I think. But yeah, it is more than 10 years old now. There are newer, more up-to-date videos that you might want to share with her or watch together with your sister. There's the 2015 presentation that I gave on the science of how regular pornography use affects the brain, but that's almost 10 years old now at this point as well. There's some other links and resources that I'm going to include in the written version of this video. So if you want that, go to my website. You'll find the link in the link tree below. and go to the blog section of that website. The most recent one, if you're watching this shortly after I release this video, will be this video, also in article form. And in that article, you'll see links to a bunch of different videos that you can choose from. You can watch them all yourself and decide, okay, I think my sister or my other family member will most resonate with this one. Anything ranging from just a few minutes long, animated explainer that goes into it really quickly and is that you might decide that's the best one to use because your sister's attention span might not be very long, or if she likes to learn in a more in-depth about things, and you could share a longer video, like a 25-minute animated explainer that I'll include a link to in that article, or one of the other more scientific presentations that are available. There's also even 2 longer documentaries that I also recommend. You can find those again, article version of this video. It's important to also mention that it's not just porn, but there are other dangers of the technological age that we live in that young kids are going to be susceptible to. Social media, streaming video platforms, and video games can all have a similar super stimulating effect on the brain, especially a developing brain, with consequences to one's well-being, one's ability to concentrate on real life, and be satisfied with their own real life. Though they tend not to be as severe as the consequences of chronic internet porn consumption, because, among other reasons, it's just not as stimulating as something that directly taps into the sexual response system of the brain. Once you've watched a video with your sister, you choose to do that, and answered any questions that she has, that's when I would tell her the following, which is that I've noticed recently some behavioral changes in your son. And honestly, it reminds me a lot of the kind of changes I can see in myself looking back after I started using internet porn. And I was the same age that now when that happened. Have you ever talked to him about any of the dangers of internet porn or technology use? And I understand if you just weren't aware of it, it's not a judgment. I'm just wondering if you've already talked to him about any of it. And then you can tell her about the tech options that are available to make her son's devices and her whole family's devices safer, and give her or the parental members of that account an alert if anyone is accessing unsafe content, so that you can have a conversation as a family about that. And of course, this should be something that the son and any other members of the family are aware of. Tell him that we're going to be installing this software on all of our devices. It's not a punishment. It's not so that we can control you. It's so that we can help protect you from a lot of the things that are dangerous out there, and that we can have conversations about something that you do find out there if you do encounter something that is dangerous or questionable. We don't want it to be something that you have to hide from us. We want to have these open conversations, but part of just like in a car, we drive with safety belts and we have safety equipment like airbags and safety belts, and we use those equipment to help make driving safer. But driving is inherently kind of a dangerous thing to do. It's necessary, which is why we do it, and we try to limit the dangers as much as possible, but it is still dangerous. And using the internet is kind of the same way. You're driving out there in the virtual space, you're putting your mind at risk, if not your body. And we want to use the safety equipment that's available to make it safer, and also talk about the dangers that you encounter so you can learn from that. And just putting those technological solutions into place is definitely not going to be enough. You also want to have ongoing conversations with him about all of these topics. And it's much better if that child or any child feels like they can come to their parents and talk about these things, ask questions like, hey, I found this online, or accidentally saw this, or my friend sent me this, and I just want to talk to you. If they don't feel safe or comfortable to bring those things up, they'll just keep them hidden. So if you judge them, if you react in anger or put any shame on that child, they're probably not going to be scared away from looking at that stuff, but they probably will be scared away from ever asking you about it or talking to you, which is something you definitely want to. And lastly, if I were you, I'd offer to be the first one to talk to that child. Or not necessarily the first. She might want to talk to him first, but then he can bring you in after, and you can have a conversation with your nephew. If that conversation with your sister goes well, and that is something that she wants you to do, is to have that conversation with her son, then I recommend you open that conversation with him while doing an activity together, whatever you like to do together. Maybe you're playing basketball or you're going on a hike or a drive. But if you're able to focus on something and not have to just face each other the whole time, it can make it easier to address uncomfortable topics like this. I would start too by telling your own story. There's so much power in our stories, and a mistake I think a lot of adults make when they're around children is to hide all of their own past mistakes and the ugly parts of their lives and just try to model perfection. But it's actually a huge favor, I think, that we can give to the next generations to share with them the things that maybe we're not so proud of, the mistakes that we've made and the lessons that we've learned from those mistakes. That's a great gift that we can give to them so that they can learn from those experiences that we have had without repeating the cycle and going through the same experiences themselves. Again, you don't need to go into all the grisly details, but our own stories often have much more power to influence people, especially the people close to us in our families and in our lives, than any video or documentary. Help him feel safe to ask any questions he has, not just about porn, but about anything. He's growing up in a world that's changing rapidly, and I think as the cool uncle who's older and more experienced than him and has gone through a lot of the things he's going to go through, you're in a great position to help guide him through some of those troubles and make his life a bit easier, or allow him to make his own life a bit easier. And at some point, if he hasn't already opened up, after you've brought up your own story, or you've asked him more general questions like, you ever, do your friends talk about this at school, or have you ever encountered something like that online? If he hasn't opened up, then you can just be more direct and say, you know what, recently I've noticed some changes in you, and I'm concerned because I noticed, looking back on my own life, I exhibited a lot of the same changes. Being more isolated, staying up late at night with my devices, not being able to pay enough attention at school, get good grades. And for me, I realized the cause was that I had encountered porn and was hooked on it. And I'm just concerned that you're repeating that cycle. And so if you are, I want you to know that I'm here to help you through it. Talk to me about anything. Or if it's something else, you can talk to me about that too. And that's the principle that I think I really want you to take away, that it's not only acceptable, but it's admirable to model your own mistakes, to show off the ugly parts, not show off, but open up and allow others to see ugly parts of your past and the struggles that you're still going through and you're still overcoming. That is, I think, a much healthier family dynamic than one in which you just tell your child or the young people in that family, here's the way to do it, don't do these things, and maintaining your own image as somehow perfect. I think a much stronger foundation for any family is built on truth. Happy New Year, by the way. Welcome to 2024. Make it an amazing, wonderful, porn-free year. And if you need more from me, more support, either one-on-one or in a group, or more resources, go to my link tree in the description below.